Hi, everyone, and welcome to Feedback, episode 12. I'm Laura Barger, the pianist, one of the pianists from Yarn Wire. And before I introduce our guest today, I just want to say we have a special announcement. Today, we're kicking off a membership drive on patreon.com. So if you become a patron by October 10th, you'll get access to special sign-up rewards like a free download of a very special bonus track by Sam Pluta. Let's just say you've never heard Katy Perry like this before. And don't forget, you can always send questions ahead of time to feedback@yarnwire.org or join the live chat on YouTube and Facebook to submit questions in real time. For now, on with the show. Today, we're joined by Ross Karre, percussionist and artistic director with the International Contemporary Ensemble, who will be talking with us, and Marianthi Papalexandri about her work for Yarn Wire, Quartet for Motors and Resonant Bodies. And you know, Russell and I were talking about this. We actually first met Marianthi at Darmstadt in 2008, and we were totally blown away by a work that she wrote for strings called Yarn, funnily enough. Do you remember that, Russell?
I do remember that, and I remember that trip a lot. Like, you know, we've been talking about a couple other composers who we met there, David Franzen, and I think I met Matt Jenkins there. And so, like, there's all this energy surrounding that particular Darmstadt. I think maybe Uday Krishnakumar was there, and he, you know, so all these circles now that are like so close were a little bit disparate at that time, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah. And with that, I think maybe for now, we'll hand it off to you, Russ.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it's really great to come together in this virtual space and chat a little bit about some of our experiences working together. And those experiences span kind of a long time, you know, in the work of living composers and the ages of our various ensembles. I met Marianthi in San Diego in 2005. We worked on some projects there. I met Laura in 2005 at the Lucerne Festival, and then everyone else at various stages since then. And it's true that there are these little hubs around the world that bring people together from different experiences of contemporary music, and Darmstadt is one, and UCSD and Lucerne, and here we are in New York, some of us, and actively presenting Marianthi's works in various places. And that's what we'll speak about today, is our history with that. And it's really, it speaks also to the fact that Yarn Wire, you know, 15 years of extremely rich commissioning would create works that are not only for two pianos and two percussion, but in the case of today's work, not for piano or percussion necessarily at all, but rather for objects and materials. And so that's kind of where I'd like to focus today's conversation, to speak about materials and materiality and where that comes from in your practice, Marianthi, and also how that has developed your focus as a group from the members of Yarn Wire. So to start, Marianthi, I wonder if you could just give a little description of the origin story of some of these objects that are common to your work, to this work, Quartet for Motors, which was premiered by Yarn Wire, commissioned by Yarn Wire, and also the solo piece that Russell mentioned before, that Matt Jenkins performed at Darmstadt. Where do these objects come from? How did you find them, or how did they find you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's absolutely a pleasure to reconnect with all of you. It's a rather special time. It's a very strange time, but it's also a very unique time in many various ways. Thank you also, Ross, for the excellent question. Well, the materials, do they come to me or I go to them, right? How do I find them? Do they find me? And so on. I'd like to give you a little bit of a context. Perhaps some of you might be familiar with the fact that I started when I was very young, I think the age like 5 to 12, I was very much involved in gymnastics, and I was very much involved in rhythmic gymnastics, which it totally involves using your body in combination with music and objects. So for me, that was a great lesson. That was exactly the time and the years where I realized there is not such separation between all these three elements. And of course, it's the body, it's the objects, the music, but in a rather large space, and rather like an empty space. And you move within this space. So I think for me, this is, you can witness this in my work. And I think it had a big impact on how I understand in general about flow. And so I want to speak about the flow, and in relation to, it's kind of awkward when you have a piece of cardboard, for example. I'm just looking at the objects that I have with me. If you have a piece of cardboard, for example, and a string, right? There is no thinking behind there is thinking behind the construction of this in a similar way as when we make a violin, right? As if when we make a musical instrument, which is always in relation to the human body. So this is what I like. I like this sort of like, I'm really attractive and fascinated by materials that they can be shaped in different forms to begin with. They have different weights, which is fascinating. And they have also different, what's the word that I'm looking? They have different properties. So it is quite interesting that somehow for me, it sort of liberates me from any restrictions. And then I'm somebody who loves to sort of like build my own restrictions around this frame. So it's a kind of like negotiation among control and loose control and so on. About, just to be a little bit more specific about materials, I've lived in many different places, different locations. So I moved to London back in the early 90s. There I got involved with the free improvisation scene. I started improvising with objects. When I moved to San Diego, I took that experience to a completely different space. I recall when I entered in this empty house in Mesa where we were living, we were given as students, and it was completely empty. I had no bed, I had nothing. And I didn't calculate it, traveling from Greece to San Diego. I didn't calculate it that it's not furnished. Oops, we missed the detail, right? But then, and you've got to stop me because I love talking, as you can tell, and I have very good stories to say. But then it's like from the empty room, my friend is driving me to supermarket. Tell me it starts with an R. What is
Ralph's.
The supermarket?
Ralph's?
I think so. And it was midnight. We went shopping at midnight and I couldn't believe it. But there, I'm in this massive store with so many different new objects, materials, products. I was like, what's happening? So if you think that, after San Diego, where we create the piece together, Kind Tema, which changed dramatically the way I think, the way I work with performers. Well, then I went to Amsterdam, from Amsterdam to Berlin, from Berlin to Vienna, from Vienna to Ithaca, now to Switzerland. These are the residency spaces where you can imagine that you go into, I was in Bamberg, I was at Solitude. These are all like you're walking into a completely new space and you're surrounded by different things. And it takes you a long time to find where can you actually buy this cardboard. So I think it's a process of of course, I'm somebody who loves to observe in general, observe people, observe objects. I am somebody who loves design. I love rather architecture. I love what you can say with a few lines. I found it that it's extremely fascinating with just like moving two elements together, how the geometry can change. And this is also the geometry of like how you play something. If I play that cardboard with this type of string and then with another type of string and with another manner, how is that changing? So I'm really somebody who wants to take the materials, sort of like squeeze them, get the juice out of them, stretch them, but also in a way, a little bit like Japanese approach, sense the materials. Can I sense what they want, how they want to be treated? Is that possible?
It's really phenomenal approach to objects and to material. And to me, when I've worked with you on projects with objects, and I know for Quartet for Motors as well, it's a little bit like, what does the object have to say? What is its character and identity? Has been my approach. Do you have a sense that you are not only liberating its essence, but also a kind of animated identity, like a personality?
Absolutely. The liberation is for you. Let the tiger out of the cage, so I can teach the tiger how to play. Mm-hmm. There is always an aim behind an artist's intention, and I don't pretend that, oh no, I just want them to be. Of course I want them to be, but I want them to be, I want to think, I want to try to give them another possibility of how they can be. And I think this is pretty normal, because we bring those materials, we bring these moments in certain spaces, in certain venues, which they also have their own be and character and identity. And again, if I go back to the gymnasium, you can't separate this. And then also what I love, and I mean, even maybe I can say I adore the fact that how it will vary from giving that material, giving that instrument from a performer to performer. It's going to be very different, right?
Absolutely. And it's like, releasing the tiger that's built into these objects, or that's stuck inside the objects, sounds very David Lynchian, is a little bit also like the tiger teaching you something too. There's an exchange. And that's, I think, one of the things that that can help to bring the instrumentalists, the performers, the bodies in the space into the conversation too, is not just how are you influencing the personality of this object, but how is it influencing you, your body carriage. And so perhaps that's a way to bring the members of Yarnwire into the conversation. And I'll just ask a sort of like, maybe it's a pointed question, but when presented with a piece like Quartet for Motors, what do you feel being a trained pianist, or a trained percussionist brings to that? And Marianthi, you can answer too. And if we start a fight, then I think we'll have succeeded. So.
But there must be some friction, right? Yeah. There has to be some friction, right?
I think maybe at the very, like, when we first played this piece, I think we had not played so many things that even verged in this direction. So I think initially it was, oh, wow. Oh, okay. Well, but I also had seen Marianthi's work before, so I wasn't it wasn't a surprise, it was something I was sort of prepared for at the same time. So it was both nervous and excited.
Yeah, I think there's sometimes a tension between like a quote unquote trained performer trying to perform like in a music, in like a, maybe not stereotypical, but like in a defaulting back to their normal mode of performance. And I think sometimes there's a friction that can exist between trying to execute these very specific actions that may be outside of their like training.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It's interesting as a
Go ahead, Russell.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. As a percussionist, like that tension that you're talking about, Ian, because like in a way, I feel like sometimes what we do anyway, when we're in the rehearsal studio or something, is like, listen, we didn't have to like impose anything on them, and actually like performing the piece in a way is like doing that listening. And you know, it's different when an audience is watching you do it. You know, we're letting these instruments kind of emerge and start speaking, and it's less physical and more kind of like mental, almost in a way. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I wanted to say is that you totally made sense to me when you said about what you said about intentions behind those objects, because I think that was sort of it's not really a struggle, but definitely a big question mark in my head when I was approaching the piece, and also the various gestures in the piece. That what was my intention and what was Marianthi's intention behind certain movements and sounds. And I think that being classically trained in a way that the intention behind the composer, what the composer wrote, means, you know, similar in a way, but vastly different in others. So I think that intentions really, you know, it's key here, at least for me. Yeah.
I have a question, actually. You reminded me of a questioning, like, what is the role of the performer in this music, you know? Because I know it's just kind of an open one, and I think that's something that we all had to encounter and figure out for ourselves. I know a lot of your other work, Marianthi, has, you know, no performers maybe, and they're like more installation based, and interfacing with that as a performer is really interesting and challenging, I think.
I before I answer that question, I want to comment on the previous question about the premiere of the piece, and I want to, if that's okay with you, I want to share the sort of agony that we went through when the package was lost somewhere, right?
Oh, right.
I have this karma of the package lost somewhere,
trauma.
you know. And if I remember correct, the premiere was something like, I think you received the box with all the materials, like probably 48 hours prior to the premiere, something like that, right? And indeed, I haven't experienced a piece so far live. I've been to one rehearsal, but that's all. I haven't seen the piece. And today is 2020. That's like seven years, right? Since the premiere. And one thing that I was very surprised, and it's sort of like was a very excellent practice for me, because I knew the conditions. I knew I wasn't going to be able to attend the premiere, and it was going to be the first time actually that I wasn't going to be there. I wasn't going to be in the rehearsals. I wasn't going to be there to give those extra information or contribute, if you like, to guide you, navigate you, right? And there was something that has to do about the way simple the conversations I had with Russell and Laura back in Darmstadt. And please allow me that I think this is very important to say, that as I was saying earlier, like you've got to understand what is the material is asking me for you. It is the same thing for a young composer when in a place like Darmstadt, you meet so many people, right? But there are these two people that somehow they have this positive energy, enthusiasm. I don't know, there was something about that made me motivate that I want to stay in touch with these people. I want to work with these people, right? And even I realized that I can even trust these people. I can trust them to the point that I can, true, right? Like trust is a big word here, that I can trust them to make a piece that is sort of consists of a scenes that you have the possibility of changing the order, although I think that the order is sort of just came so naturally. But it was a kind of, I want to point out and I mentioned this, the sort of like first impression you have about meeting with somebody. And the same with Ross when we first met and we work on Containment. He was one of his first video pieces. And it was me, something inside of me saying, Ross, you've got to do this. You've got to do more videos. So you've got to do this. And I think nothing will happen and we will not have this great episode today without that strong feeling. So that was that. And I very much recall that we had a Skype conversation right before the premiere. And I want to thank you for that very special, sorry, I don't want to become emotional, but it was a very unique emotion that from far away, I'm in good hands. So, and back
Episode's
to
over.
what... back to what Ian, back to your comments about do I really perform, like finding my way? I really think that the fact that you didn't have a lot of time, actually, it worked very well. The fact that you didn't have enough time, the fact that maybe my absence made you to stretch your imagination. See how Marianthi will do that, how Marianthi will ask me to do this, right? For Nin and Ian in a more imaginative way, in some ways. For Laura and Russell, okay, they have seen the string which connects to instruments, and then the percussionist has these pegs that they're hanging and they're moving, and what is happening here, right? So that was staying in your mind. So in a kind of like, I believe that you united your forces somehow, and also the space, the issue project space, I think it has something. The audience, from what I've seen and guess what? Ross happens to be there to make the video, and I'm like, what?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Was that all planned, right? So,
Yeah.
right? Ross was there again, and I'm like, that's it. It's all happening. It's all happening, you know? And just a small comment, it also has to do with the box. Something that I've trained myself from the box, that there's something about, I realize, I cannot ship a piano, right? But there's something about receiving a box from somewhere, from far away. There's something about, remember I put all very carefully the materials in the box from Berlin. I had to really calculate the weight because of the shipping cost. Everything has to be 5 kilos, and all started with back to when I was at UCSD, when I worked with Ross, with Justin, with Steve Schick, when Steve said, and the idea that it has to fit everything in a single box.
Mm-hmm.
I travel a lot, I want everything to fit in that box. And then, think about it. How often the feeling we all have when we receive a box, and the curiosity, what is inside this box?
That's why we're addicted to Amazon.
It's all calculated.
We were never able to repack that box.
No, it's true.
I'm sure you
did it so efficiently. Yeah.
Oh,
I just pulled it off the shelf here, and it is very difficult to how did you do it? I think I even have a bigger box.
Yeah,
now.
that's not the
Makes it easier. That's not
Yeah.
the original box.
The original
DHL was
not
not
that
happy.
size.
I had some good help from my partner from Pelang, who is Swiss, huh? And there you
That
get
answers
to. That's answered. It is perfectionist in arrangement, and you see back. We are fond of boxes and storing the materials, but I believe I also create a manual, right? Mm-hmm. Where you can really and I got really fascinated. I think it was one of the moments that I realized that, do I need scores, or can my scores be just manuals?
Yeah, like scenes.
To some extent.
Yeah. I have the original paper here. I know that that we can queue it up as digital files too, but I'm curious. I mean, I have this box, and I wonder if I can just bring some of these objects out, and you could sort of comment on what they are,
Yeah.
where did they come from, what was the experience of learning how to play these things. And one thing that strikes me is, I don't know if you remember this, Marianthi, but in 2007, we had a little percussion conference at UCSD, and Alan Oddie was there. Do you remember that? Okay.
How can I forget that? It changed my life.
It was he performed a piece by Herbert Brun, and you actually switched the masterclass so that you took his seat and showed him about intentionality, body carriage, and focus. And I remember it was something like this. So I have the motor, and there's like this, and then you showed, but that's different from this. and it was like, oh, okay, well that was obvious, but we don't ever bring that phenomenon to the surface in pedagogy necessarily. We kind of treat it as this secret thing. We're not supposed to talk about body carriage, and it's supposed to be genuine or neutral, right? But there is no neutral, and you showed that to me then, and I've never forgotten it. But it's this object, and then held by a person in some cases. It's as an activator for sounds and friction, and then there are objects held up by tables and wood blocks and things. There's some videos of that show those two modes. But I wonder, like, maybe you could just describe a little bit. I'll switch over to this overhead camera of the objects.
Yeah, and I realized that I didn't answer Russell's question about the occasions where I actually, there's no a human involved in my pieces, where things are just running autonomously, or and sort of like how are those moments connected to my work, or to the more like performing installation works, or to the performances. I think again, the going back to the work of the for Jan Weyer, there was and there has been for some time now, maybe for, I will say, a decade, where I'm fascinated by, as I said, the idea of the flow, and also how I can achieve continuity. But within this continuity, there is, there is some sort of like a periodic movement. There are micro changes. There are more like something that forms an organic sound. And I think the motors gave me that sort of like, it's like they gave me the ability to have something run for a certain time, to have control over that, if you like, and also like to work outside rehearsal time, which is very important, because if you are I have to say that as a composer who works very closely with musicians, you do crave for that time, right, with the instruments, with the materials. And I think I remember even as a student back in London, I've always been at UCSD, always in the studio where they keep the percussion, where they keep the instruments. And so I asked myself, there's no reason for me, or why not to find a way to be surrounded by those materials? And since I'm one person and with two hands, right, I cannot operate various objects at the same time, as if I will do when I will compose for an ensemble. So I think this came out of a need to also let something run and have it in any time that I found it's suitable to me, but also it gave me the chance to live with that sound outside rehearsal time. And by so, I create a different connection to sound in general, but also to the behavior of those, to the behavior of the material itself, of the object. I'm sorry, I missed the chance to explain what we've seen in the screen, but it is one of those motors, that you have there. And what was very, one of my intentions with the piece for Jan Weyer, and I actually was very fascinated by the fact when I found out that it's an ensemble for 2 piano and 2 percussion, 2 pianos and 2 percussions, there is certain symmetry here. There's 2 female performers, 2 male performers. And I was thinking about, if you think of the piece at the beginning, there is the loop, right? There is like a circular square shape. I wanted to have this sort of, I'm very, very fond of creating a situation where performers are completely relying on each other. And what I mean by that is in a physical way, meaning that if I move slightly, that will have an impact on the other person's instrument. I love to ask musicians to share their instrument, hold that instrument, and depend of like their bodily behavior and how they move, how they hold things, everything is shifting. And this is not something that you can have fully control over it. That's exactly the point of putting into that sort of situation. And so what we see here is the motors, which they have those wheels, which I shape them and I prepare them with rosin, which is the sticky material. There is another one with a rubber band, and there's another one which is absolutely free. And then next to that, we see the stretching material, the red one, which exactly allows you to define the distance among the musicians based on the space. You can see, so, and the idea was that, and I think that has to do a lot to do with the time I spent in Germany. There's a lot about the idea of efficiency, economy, how you can be efficient, meaning that work with one mechanism but this mechanism is serving in 3 different ways. And also I did this because I was trying to secure that there will be a natural way of the events to unfold, a natural way. So there's no, we will sort of like, natural way to, avoid breaks, sonic breaks, but also like in terms of like how you would operate the materials.
I like how in the score you call it scenes, right? You call it scenes in the score. So
yes,
and that
scenes,
kind of alludes
exactly.
to that flow. That's cool.
And I believe that now that you said scenes, I really recall the time I was reading about Peter Brooks. He has this open door, and he has this is a theater director who thinks and influenced me dramatically when I was exposed to this concept that if you want an actor to not act, but to be natural on stage, right? If imagine you have you're sitting on a chair and there's another chair there, and you just ask your actor to just go and grab that chair, okay? So their attention goes to the other chair. But by doing that, I don't think about how I'm going to lift up my body, move across the room. I will think about the task. So so in a similar kind of way as a composer, I draw the attention to one element, and then by the time that you are there, I shape the conditions like this. So there is no way that you can repeat this, or you can have full control over that. And then as soon as you are there trying to find the flow with that, there is time for you to be in that moment, but then there is a shift, and I draw your attention to something else, and then there is a similar process. But then overall, I just hope that you are there with the people, with the space, and the objects. And that's exactly what the motor-driven instruments or the mechanisms, they allow me. They allow me that flexibility of let something run, let fill the room, or when I play my instruments for the Untitled 2 with the plexiglass tubes, I let it be, I let it run. The motors are in the same way you were asked to place them inside the piano. Let them run, use the piano as a resonator. And what do? You're not performing in a way. You become a listener. You're just be there and you just listen. And I think this is great because that is automatically, it brings, it's like you bring all the audience close to you because you're becoming part of the audience. And I think the audience you had at the premiere, from what I sense from the video, they were great audience. They were really, really like calm, relaxed, and that's the impression I had.
And I think
I want to pick up on a thread. Like, I'm sorry, Laura, but I want to pick up on a thread of the idea that when the performer becomes a listener, they actually create a way for the listener to be as close to the object as they are, by way of, let's say, mimesis or some way of mirroring and imagining living vicariously through the performer. I wonder, from the performer's perspective, if that's something that you are conscious of while interpreting this music, or if that's come into your thinking as you play.
Ross, when you did it with the motor, when you like looked at it in that way, I think that like you are drawing attention to it. Yeah, not that, but that. Yeah. When you do that, that is a way to like signal to the audience that you are doing what they're doing also, and then they can kind of live through that too. And I think maybe that's at least something that I kind of try and think about now, especially when doing actions or playing music that aren't as clear to an audience, because it's so new. It's not like anything they've ever checked out before. And I think we talk about intentionality in that way in our rehearsals sometimes.
And Laura, I think I jumped onto your comment. So
no. Well, I was going to say, I think that process of becoming one with the audience, we're really lucky both times that we have performed this to have a situation where we could sort of set the audience around us, and we were sort of in some ways inside them, and so they were surrounding us. And I think that really, it seems like a simple thing, but in a work like this, I think it's absolutely essential. It's clearly not a piece of concert music in the traditional sense. And so I think it really has to be approached, even thinking about how the audience, where they physically are when they're experiencing the piece is so important.
And I think that in a way, like virtuosic music, and that's a reductive term, but music where the audience member can't do what the performer is doing, overnight. That you're doing something that requires a number of hours to prepare. Let's define it that way. In a way, that's a distancing effect. That actually takes the audience member and puts them in a place of remove from what they can experience every day. What I like about what Marianthi's music is doing by drawing viewers closer is that it's not impossible for them to imagine being able to make these gestures and to hold these objects. But there is a lot of nuance in the pressure, weight, and the distribution of both of those in this music, because the friction has to be just right as materials glide over one another for the sonic effect to be there. While that nuance might not be immediately apparent to the audience, it means we don't have like this demonstrable virtuosity. It's not a show-off moment, but it brings people in. And the other thing, I don't know if this has happened for any of you, but Marianthi or the performers from Yarnwire, have you ever had anyone say something like, "Oh, I'll never look at cardboard the same way again," or does this change the perspective of the audience, their own view of the animation of? Could it change their view of objects?
I think you've said something like this to me.
It does for me. I just wonder if anyone else.
For you.
Am I alone?
You're alone in this world, right?
I think we did get comments like that, especially in Chicago.
I feel like that. Yeah, that's
Chicago.
was a much more intimate event. So there was some built-in interaction there.
And was that at Constellation or what kind of space was that in?
It was at the Art Club of Chicago.
Oh yeah, okay.
Which was kind of perfect because we were brought there to kind of, from what I understand, and Russell, maybe actually Russell, you should fill us in more on that event itself.
Just a shout out to Jenna for bringing
Jenna
this
Lyle.
up. Mm-hmm. Jenna Lyle, thank you.
Right.
I don't really recall what the thing. It was. Well, okay, yeah, we were presenting pieces that were more in like based on not installation per se because we're performing, but that would use space, right? So we played a piece by Olivia Block on that concert that used, kind of Foley, and we used the space. We basically used the entire gallery, and that was the idea, to kind of inhabit a physical space with these pieces. And Marianthi's piece is perfect for that. Because we were able to, use that space in that way. I think that was.
Do you guys also find that when performing this piece, it's just another, like when you were mentioning virtuosity, there's some sort of like risk or danger element involved in operating the motors because it's an inherently like uncontrollable or
well, the surfaces
consistent?
are uneven. Yeah. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No,
I just want to comment on your what you said about the theater director who influenced you by saying, approaching it, the chair. I actually had maybe that is the intention that's being read from the audience, but I remember handling the motor and then having the red thread that's going all between the four of us. I remember specifically that my eye movement, I didn't want my audience to look at me and my eyes were just like doing this the whole time because I'm trying to keep, trying to see, if I am aligned with everyone. It's actually a very delicate fine line between being really calm and then doing a task, yet handling something extremely delicate with my fingers that I have to coordinate with people around me that are pretty far away.
Yeah.
It's so accurate what you just said, how you describe it. It's extremely accurate. I also recall, and this is again from the conversation we had later, that the line was kind of jumping right out of the groove. And of the groove, exactly. And I think that I could see, I can recognize these moments where I think that you use your hand just to keep it in the groove and something. But I wonder how, for me, I understood that this sort of like imperfections, if you like, or the nature of the materials. There is one stretchable paper, for instance. So after some use, either you replace it, but it will not act in the same manner. So I'm somebody who is rather searching for those imperfections because they sort of. If you like that, when we perform, we are so much used to be on stage. And as you were saying, we're not supposed to look at each other. We are supposed to look that we have things under control and we have mastered everything. And I'm not interested in that. I'm sorry. I'm done with this. And I'm done with this in any aspect of my life. In anything I do, I don't want to be. I make my effort. I spend time thinking about the light today. I thought about the color. I thought about the elements, and I want that the audience, they can actually see that we are working. This is not easy job. Why we should hide it? I don't understand this virtuosity that we are executing so well. Why? I adore to see people working. I adore when, I can see them working in construction. It makes me happy. Makes me happy when I see people working. It's something that I always have And that's why I always lived in factory lofts, and because there's something about work and the physical activity that comes along with it, which I found it's beautiful. And so that beauty of your even, oh my God, is it going to escape? What are we going to do with it? And there's also another session when you play with the chain and the chain and the platform that you've got to synchronize. And I know it's not so easy to synchronize, but that's sort of like moment of maybe for you like a struggle. It's like, why did the struggle? It's just a moment. We look at each other and we just synchronize. We make connection. Why we should have to hide it? Why we should hide that moment of us being connected? It is.
Yeah.
I found it that this is beauty. There is beauty behind the effort that we make. And like I have coming here today, I thought I want to show you another material, which is another string, and it's made out of velvet. I don't know. I found this in second-hand store in Berlin somewhere. And what I love about this string is that it's breakable. It's so easy to break.
No.
So I gave a workshop, and I gave this to the participants, and we were doing the moment that the string will break, we've got to do something else. And I love this. And for me, it's like, it's very old. And I would like to embrace this. I would like to embrace the aging of the materials. I want to tell them, thank you for that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. I think that the generosity of these materials is also what creates, Ian, as you speak to risk and precarity and like the precariousness of these relationships, but also like the mindset of being in sort of real-time problem solving or real-time solution making or real-time problem making. Both is really fascinating. It feels like cooking. It feels like that to me. Recipes of ingredients. You do a lot of precision, but then you have to adjust and make improvisations along the way. And I'm looking to see if there are questions from the audience, and if not, I have one last question. So I'll keep an eye out for any that have come our way, or maybe Russell and Laura can pass
no
those
questions
along.
so far. Go ahead, Ross.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I think that as we wrap up, I wonder if Marianthi and Yarnwire, if you can speak to how do you program a work like Quartet for Motors? What else can exist alongside it on a program, and how does that influence the experience of the audience? I think the world premiere had maybe a Thomas Meadowcroft
that's what you
premiere
put.
as well. That's what you program. Okay, so that's the answer. But what how are your experiences with the curatorial or programming aspects of this music?
Well, Marianthi, I don't know if you remember, but I think this is how it went down. We were talking about what could possibly go with the piece during the premiere, because in an ideal way, we were discussing, like a white gallery space that's just real stark, and we could, fill that would be ideal. Issue's the exact opposite, so that wouldn't work. But we were also playing around with having other installations or things going, so it would be a kind of like exploration of your work. But then the way that the event turned out, we did program Thomas Meadowcroft's piece, and I think we had to figure out a way to stage both of them so that they could work together. They're very opposite pieces, but I think the staging and the framing for the audience was what let them work together, and each occupied their own half, I think. So the other times we've played it, we always have to think about the flow of the concert, because this piece, I think it takes a lot of, not a lot of thought. Well, it's a pretty intense and amazing piece, right? So you don't want to overload it with other music, and so the other things that go along with it really have to complement and not subvert it or something. So those are some of the considerations. I mean, a big thing is space and the scenario. At least that's how I think about it. I don't know if anyone else has.
I would love to see like a string quartet perform this piece, like maybe after playing like a Brahms piano quintet or something. Just like, well, the same people using their body in a different way.
Yeah.
Would I think would also be really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And Marianthi, haven't you composed for a Baroque group or recorder ensemble? That's a kind of interesting juxtaposition too.
Well, I have composed for a quartet for recorders.
Okay.
It's a very early piece, but it is more of like taking apart their instruments than actually playing their instruments, and involves a lot of preparation. And the same quartet actually, then we create the motor-driven system with recorders, which are actually like friction drums and so on. I think that although I haven't really been in a situation where my music has been programmed with classical music, I don't have the sort of like fixed ideas about this should be that and this should be this and so on. Personally, I would love to go, and I say this word today, love today a lot, I repeat that, but I would love to go to a concert that is only 50 minutes long or 20 minutes long. I'm so happy actually when there is because we never talk about how many hours, how many years, what actually it takes to make that concert. People come, they stay with us for 1 hour, but we're talking about days, months, right? We're talking about hours before and so on. So, and personally, as I said, for me, I'm somebody who likes to give time to people, give time to the listener, give time to the instrument, give time to the performer. To be there in the space. So I think that if 20 minutes, 1 or half an hour, it's absolutely fine. And I've had situations like this, a recent piece that was presented in Stuttgart at Eclat Festival. It was for a cello for Séverine Ballon that we had it played like 3 times. So it was in the same space and with all the cardboards, but in a rather large space with extending strings. And it's a rather interesting work. And I was surprised that I had people coming all 3 concerts. So because they said it's always different and they always find something. So I really truly believe that, especially in the work that we have, that's the work. So much input, and we are used to have input. We used to have a lot of information, stream of information. What happened with this piece is that it was a great discovery that the piece is like 26 minutes, as I said, and basically there are certain mechanisms. So there is a point. It starts with just Séverine bowing on those strings that they are attached to the cello, and they're all mounted to these foam boards, sound panels, resonators. And then at some point, there is another string which is the left to the right, and she hooks this she mounts this to the bow. So when she's bowing, there are other motors that it becomes a kinetic system that is operating by her. So then she activates all panels at the same time, and it's like actually it's very physical, and she's like. And it requires effort, physical effort. And so I'm not surprised that indeed some of the often observations or requests that I get from my performance, they say, I know it's a piece that it's for, the new piece that I have with like this, a kinetic system that is suspended and it's spinning around. I know that the instrument is is moving along, right? But still, she was requesting that she will perform this piece before any other piece in the program, because she wanted to be mentally, she wanted to have, we often use the music to condition audience ears. I often ask, please, maybe we need to have some fresh ears. If there's music comes before, those sounds, maybe they get lost. So I think that there are certain conditions, but I think that every music has certain conditions. And, if it wasn't that effort that we make to so carefully dedicate our time and ourselves to create those conditions, I think music will not be as special as it is.
That's very beautifully said, and thank you for music that can open ears and create a fresh frame to experience more of your music, other music. It's really opens a beautiful window. I think we've wrapped up our time for today, but I've enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to hand the mics back to Russell and Laura to talk about what's going on what's up next, and yeah, thank you, Marianthi, and thanks to Jan Wire for having me.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
all.
I've learned so much from today's talk.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Me too.
Well, so yeah, I mean, this was a wonderful and beautiful and it actually gave me some things I'd like to think about tonight on my way home. But our next episode, I hope all of you watching will join us on Tuesday, October 6th for a chat with Christopher Trapani and Erica Scheinberg. Ross, do you want to give us a little preview for the next Tuesdays at 11 with International Contemporary Ensemble? At 7, sorry, Tuesdays
Indeed.
at 7.
Yes, well, thank you for the opportunity to plug. The International Contemporary Ensemble is gathering every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. We tried to steer clear of the Yarn Wire 3 o'clock. we all have our regularly broadcasted moments nowadays, which is really nice, actually. Regularity feels good. And this week at 7, we're going to explore the deep archive back to 2008 of our work with composers from Mexico with the America Society. So starting with Julio Estrada and then dozens of other composers that we've worked with since 2008 through several festivals. And then following that, on the 13th of October, we're going to have an open forum for all composers to talk about calls for scores. What do you want from them? What should they feel like? What are we doing wrong? What has the entire new music field done wrong in calls for scores? And we'll interrogate that with a lot of openness. So hopefully it'll be a rich discussion. But thanks.
What's the application fee for that talk?
$0. Precisely $0.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you again to all of you for joining us today. Thanks for all of you who are watching at home or wherever you may be. Remember to subscribe to our channel and check out our page on patreon.com. That's it for now, and thanks for watching.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.